Hello, and welcome to the Painters Motivating Painters End of Month review video for the month of May 2024. If you're new to the channel, we're part of a Facebook group full of wonderful people who are all obsessed with miniature painting and get together to share tips and tricks and show work to each other and kind of help each other take the next step on our hobby journeys. And as part of that, we've had a bunch of lovely entries here. People have given us a little bit of information about what they're going for, and we're going to do our best to provide constructive feedback to take them ahead. So thanks in advance to everyone who submitted their work. Lots of great stuff there. And we'll get straight away started with Sean Fairbanks Etten. Sean was looking to do a more kind of dirty, unbathed look here with a realistic skin tone and debating putting in armpit hair, which is an amazing detail, I have to say. So yeah, I think this figure looks really good. I love the really pale, like subterranean looking skin tone and the way you've got like all that bruising and like the kind of ligature marks where the ropes are rubbing off the legs and like the scabs and like the red elbows, everything in there. I think it looks very, very good. And in terms of realism, like that's it's a nice skin tone. Um, I think that probably the next step, adding some dirt and things would be a good idea, especially say for example down where the foot is, like to just even bed it in more if you had some kind of texture paste, because like this thing is like huge. So I imagine like it's standing on one foot, it's gonna like into the ground. And also the foot, both of the feet have a little bit of this kind of like plasticky look to them, which you get when you have obviously you have a very good realistic base skin tone, but because in a very pale person, like in their feet, you can see all the veins and things under the surface. But since we can't see them in the figure, it makes it look a little bit like they're wearing like a rubber suit. Just like particularly just the feet and the belly are the kind of bits that stand out to me that you could have a bit more color, or if you were to like dirty them up, just to break up that large surface, it would do an awful lot to kind of help give us that idea of like natural kind of skin there. Um, so in terms of adding in hair or dirt, there's kind of a couple of different ways you can do it. One of them is if you like water your paint down until it like splits, and you end up when you paint, you don't get an even finish. You get lots of like little spots, and that'll give that impression of like lots of short hair or like dirtiness. Or you can mix in the skin tone to kind of like so it doesn't stand out too much into like a hair color and kind of build it up in layers to get it like as if there's fine hair and darker hair. You can just literally draw it on. I know someone did a bust of Wolverine, and they did like all the big, massive, mad chest hair and all these lines. But it's a fair bit of work. But I think that would look just to like give a suggestion of kind of like dirt or hair around like the belly button and things that would look good. Or as well, maybe having some red rawness on the bottom of the stomach where it's like rubbing off the fabric there. That'd be a good idea. Um, and then the other thing I was going to say is the hair looks fine, but I think it could be have a little bit of just something else to it. Like maybe obviously it's not meant to be like lovely conditioned hair where it's super shiny and glossy. But if there was like streaks of gray growing through it, or like some sort of red brown, just to make it a little bit more interesting, because the skin tone is much nicer uh, overall than the hair. And I thought it might be cool to have where there's like a he has like a holster, like a knife on his thigh, like where you keep a pistol. And it'd be cool to have like rust that's like rubbed off on his leg there, and that would help separate them out a little bit because you've got a little bit of that thing where the kind of the skin where it's touching it, it's not like spilled over, but we can tell it's one piece. That makes sense. So you need something to hide the line in between the knife and the thigh. Um, and just something like that would kind of work, and you could work it in other places as well if you wanted. Um, but I think it's a really like really impressive considering the size of this thing and the amount of like stuff going on with like the weird tumorous twin head growing out of it and all the like skulls and figures and doodads around it. It's really really good looking. So fair play. I'm sure Jim has a few other things to add.
Not too much, to be honest. Really, really nice. On the whole, I think you've done a great job with it. It's very smooth. It's separated very nicely. With the exception, I think, of like toes and toenails. So back to a little bit about sort of the texture of the feet, and I agree with that. But I think if you just separate these toenails out a little bit, that would be cool as well, because they're sort of just melding together a little too much. So just make them stand out a little bit better. And then the only other thing I thought was, I think this is like a leather you've gone for on his skirt thing, kilt, tattered thing. So I'd maybe, I mean, I get that there's like these rusty tones in here for this battered piece of armor plating he's got on, and that looks good. But it's kind of a little bit close to the tones of the leather as well. So I'd just try and differentiate them a little bit. And the easier one, I think, would be to use sort of more ruddier or red rusts rather than the sort of similar tone that you've gone for in the leather. Just to differentiate them, because again they kind of meld together a little bit. And then there's a little bit of separation on this band that's on his arm, and there's a bit of strange texture there. I wasn't really sure what's going on there. It looks like it might be part of the sculpt, but maybe just try and define the shapes a little bit better around this armband. That'd be cool. I love what you've done with the scarring and having like this red tone around this very big and obvious scar tissue. That looks awesome. Good job. And obviously redding up the elbows as well. That's nice. So yeah, an awful lot going well with this. And I'm not sure if Matt mentioned it, but please, Lord, admit to me that these are lights in the base. And that's not painted on OSL. If that's painted on OSL, then 11 out of 10. That's amazingly well done. But I think they might be lights, right? But either way, either you've done a great job integrating them in. That looks very, very convincing. And then with like the flat, I know you didn't really mention it. It was more to do with him, but maybe just, I don't know if this is finished yet, but I just thought that the stones look a little bit clean. So yeah, a little bit more detritus, weathering and stuff on the stones if it's not finished already. All right, thank you very much, Sean. Hope that helps. Okay, moving up to Ryan, who has done Mr. Traka, and he's gone for a black armor without using any actual black, which is a very tricky thing to do. Only been painting for 2.5 months as well, which is awesome. So go you. This looks amazing. So yeah, he wants to show the weathering on the armor and the metal without making it look like a total rust bucket. So yeah, here we go. And I think for 2.5 months, you're absolutely slaying this hobby, to be honest. This is super, super good. The red, particularly, the orc skin. I'm painting orcs at the minute, and yeah, I love the skin tone that you've gone for here. Very, very cool. Your sponged on weathering looks good. Like around the edges of these claws, so where you've sponged it on, like the silver stuff, that looks great. What's not quite as sharp is where you've gone in with the lines on the claws. So get back in here with a black, and you just go between silver and black, just doing sharper lines just to clean these up. Or in fact, if these ridges are deep enough, you might even get away with just resetting this to black and then dry brush the silver on. That might work. Give that a go. But I like the way that you've rendered like the armor in general. It's a very convincing chromatic black. So I think you did, a great job there. A lot of people don't bother with doing that, and I think it gives a nice richness to the black, which is very good. I like your checkered freehand that you've done on the armor plate here. You could just paint it in again slightly slightly thinner layers, so you get just to cover up some of this black, and then just go in and scratch it or sponge on a bit of weathering or something. But yeah, it's just a slight coverage issue on the blue, it looks like, which is the only instance of that problem showing up, I think. So yeah, just watch your coverage on blue. Good tip for that actually is to sort of paint it like a middle grey first and then go over with the blue, rather than try and put blue straight over black. Doesn't cover very well because blue's very transparent naturally. The muzzle burn, I think, almost pulled that off. I would have a little bit of this colour here, this umbery colour, ochre, to start off the transition. But then, yeah, so you want the ochre colour, then purple, then blues. I'd just maybe make this blue a little bit smaller, so I'd have the purple going a little bit further towards the tip. For that, but great effort. It definitely sells what it is. That's great. What else did I have? The shading on the skull was a little bit heavy, and on the horns. So it's either a wash or a contrast paint by the looks of it. So don't let it pool up quite so much next time. If it's not dark enough the first time around, that's fine. Do it in stages, let it dry, do it again, let it dry, do it again if you need to. And then something like this is always nice if you come back in, pick out the raised edges with either dry brushing or just conventional edge highlighting method. Would be cool just to tidy those up. Yeah, and then the only thing I had is try and get some weathering in the creases and places water might gather. So like panel lines like here, just a little bit here and there, just dabs of browns where water would collect in the armour sort of thing, because it's obviously not been looked after very well because it's an OG. But yeah, on the whole, for 2.5 months, yeah, 10 out of 10. Really, really good stuff. Thank you, Ryan. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Jumping in at the deep end with
Mm.
like, all these fancy like freehands and having that heated metal effect and things like that. Like, fair play to you. Carrying on with what Jim was saying about the weathering, yeah, I think it's good to just kind of have an idea in your mind of kind of like how the weathering happened when you start applying it, rather than just sort of applying it wherever. So for me, there's a couple of places you kind of have the silver where it's like the paint is worn off, and you have rust as well, but like they're not always like in the same area. So you can have both, but I think they mostly overlap because like the paint is there to stop the metal from rusting. So what's going to happen is that it's going to wear off, expose the metal, then the metal is going to get dull, and then it's going to get rusted, if that makes sense. So I think like on the thumb of the claw thingy, it looks pretty good. There's like some holes with some rust coming out of it. But on other places, there's just like patches of rust, but there's no scratching, or there's loads of scratching, but there's no rust, if that makes sense. And as well, just on the like the silver paint, the scratching, some of it looks like splatter, which doesn't make that much sense. Like splatter would make much more sense for like mud, maybe for rust, but like what you're showing there is that like chips have hit it and like scraped along. So I think the kind of linear look for that is a bit better. But overall, he looks really good, and I think you've done a great job, as Jim said, using a chromatic black to make it look more interesting, and then making him look like his armor has been maintained at some point, but like he's so in the thick of it that it just is wrecked up again in no time, and it looks great. Keep it up. Let's see what you're doing in another 2.5 months. Okay, then we have ordinary molasses. Posting this defiler, largest and most time-consuming miniature you've done. I can totally understand why. We're gonna push past tabletop more towards display. Well, I think this is definitely well beyond tabletop. Anyone who's gonna look at all that chaos trim and be like, not for tabletop, man. And you've even got the trim within the trim, as it's called, where like the black has this like gray line around everything. And I can only imagine how long that must have taken to do all of that. So kudos to you for having the patience and the determination and the brush control to get it all in there. I think it looks great. Um, so, um, so yeah, the TMM for the trim looks very good. I like that very reddish kind of brass tone you've got going on. And I think that the steel also looks very good. It's got this nice beaten kind of look to it. There's the odd part of the brass, like this big panel on the knee, which I think looks a little bit undetailed, if that makes sense. So some sort of like verdigris or something else to break up that area might look good. I think like the claw looks excellent because it's got that. It looks like like what you'd see on like a JCB, like an excavator, like that metal that it's kind of corroded, but it's rubbed off. It looks like it's been used loads. So that's great. And then on this weird like multi-whip gun thing, I think some of there's like spiked balls, and maybe you could have the a little bit more shading just to differentiate like where the spikes are and where the spear bit is. It's a bit of a like an annoying piece, to be honest with you, because it's just so many like tentacles and stuff going on there. But just like to make it a bit more readable, a little bit more shading would go a long way there. But yeah, overall, like it's just really, really good, the whole torso and everything. You asked about the freehand, whether to do TMM or NMM. So I've run into that problem. I was doing a dragon, and he had a big silver armor panel, and I was wanted to do freehand on it. Um, And I was like, would you be better off using metallic paints or not? And the answer is you're not, basically. So like 2D artists and like painters and stuff, they don't use uh, metallics generally unless it's like a very particular special effect you're going for. Because what happens is that like if you do like say if you do a dark line using like a dark steel color to define the edge of something, well when you rotate the piece around that'll shine and it stops being a dark line, and then your NMM stuff or your flat colors don't react like that and it looks weird. And then even what I did with my dragon was I decided to do it all in TMM, but that was also annoying because different metallic pigments react differently to the light, so it just like makes it very hard for your eye to kind of read it. So like I would stick to using non-metallic colors for freehands, especially when you think about it. Like when you look at vehicles that are painted, like they don't paint them with metallic paints. Like I suppose a car, it has a gloss coat, but it'd be over like the whole thing. It's not like particular parts of it are going to be silver and others aren't. And then yeah, I really like your like dark mechanicum freehand kind of thing. I think maybe it would have been a bit easier for you if you'd made it a bit bigger. Like I know you wanted to get the head and the 8 pointed star and everything, but if you fill like the whole panel with just the skull, and you can even have it like overfilling it so that the existing chaos trim kind of like impinges into it, then you basically just have an easier time because it's a bigger area to paint. Although it'd still be annoying because there's stuff in the way. But yeah, I can totally appreciate what a an effort that would have been to get it all symmetrical and get all the lines in the right place. But it looks really, really good, to be honest with you. So, and I don't think the metallic pigment detracts from it really because it's pretty minimal anyway. And it just generally looks like good freehand. And the little kind of chaos star on the like front leg thing that also looks really good. So I think you're in a good place overall. So yeah, definitely worth all the effort and definitely above a tabletop standard. Jim?
Yeah, totally agree. Well above tabletop for me. It's actually selling more as gold to me than the trim. So yeah, if that's what you're going for, then success. If it's brass or bronze or something, yeah, it's a little bit more like gold to me. I think you've done a super job on the freehands as well. And all the edge highlighting picking out. You could actually, I know it's a big thing to say, but if you were going to do something like this again with the edge highlighting, I think you could actually take the brighter points a bit further. There is a little bit room for brightness there, even if it's not everywhere, just like on some of the like higher upward facing surfaces. That would be nice just to punch those little edges up a little bit. And then also, I get this is like the heavy metal style, but like you could also explore cell shading for a vehicle like this, which is where you don't paint it the same black. You would the upward facing ones you'd go sort of more grey, and then the like shaded ones would be more towards the black. Just gives a little bit more contrast to the armor that way. There's also some side panels that have absolutely no weathering, which kind of jumped out. I get the lower stuff is kind of banging on things as it moves around in whatever war zone it's in, but I still think that a little bit of light weathering up on these large flat areas up here would be helpful. Sticking with the weathering, actually, it's all kind of one-dimensional. You could do with a bit more depth to it in some places, like some of the bigger stuff. You'd put some dark marks above the lighter stuff, and then come in with a even lighter tone if you need to, just at the bottom. It makes it look like there's an actual dent and there's a lip sticking out, and the light is catching off of that little lip. Gives it a nice amount of depth to the weathering that way. This face thing you did here with the glowing eyes is awesome as well. Well done for that. So yeah, and down on the base as well, I like what you did down there. So if we can just get to a picture, I like how you've incorporated these bright but not too crazy colours down on the base, just to add a little bit of flavour to it. I really enjoyed that. That's nice use of those colours. It can be quite easy to these alien toughs just to be like buying, standing right at it, far too saturated and bright. But I think you've done a nice job there. So yeah, great stuff, Ordinary Molasses. Thank you for submitting. Okay, moving up to Juan Miguel. This is first time posting work for critique, and he's trying to imitate a style from Yoshitaka Amano, as the mini is giving a strong Final Fantasy vibes. Yes, it does. Just wants to know if you nailed the overall mood, and if not, would like some feedback on how to get better at it. And I think the mood is very good on this, like a very aggressive, like direct central lighting, which I think you've sold beautifully. The attention is all the way up here for me, despite all this busy color going on. You've balanced it really, really well, separated it very, very well, and all of the brightness and attention for me is up here. And even down here, this big head that he's on, that appears to be severed, is painted really nicely, but you've kept like just the amount of like muted tones down there just right, so it's bright enough to see what's going on, but it's nowhere near bright enough to compete with what's going on up there. So like lighting and atmosphere, I think you've absolutely nailed it. There was a slight hesitation for me, like why there's so much shadow on this neck. I think there should be some highlight on this neck. That just looks unpainted. Same with their hair. I get that it's kind of, you've got the vignette effect and you're trying to darken it out, but just a little bit. I mean, like how his cheek and like his cheekbone and like side of his lip here is just so something like that, but maybe even just a bit softer. But don't leave it flat black. But yeah, really, really, really cool overall. So Yoshitaka does quite a lot of busyness in his art. It's very complicated. There's a lot of color, etc. So I love how you've used the color in like his legs and this weapon that he's got. But I think the cape would be a really, really good opportunity as well to add some busyness. It doesn't need to be like hugely colourful, because I think you've got enough colour on there, but if just a very soft like brocade on the cape somewhere, just to bring a little bit more interest to it, because all it's got is going for it really is the sculpt of the folds and your highlighting, which is very, very nice. But yes, thumbs up to you, yes. But yeah, I'm just thinking a little bit of detail free-handed onto the cape would be cool, and in keeping with Yoshitaka. And then the only other thing I had was that the metal ring down there could use some smoothing out. They've got great warm tones, and the contrast is super, and like the placement of the highlights is really good. But I would spend a bit more, if you're going to do anything, I'd spend some time smoothing that baby out. Loads of ways you could do it. You can either try dry brushing it in there, or carry on with the layering that you've done, or you can use like hashing, like so it looks more like a brushed steel. So use really, really sharp thin lines all around it in varying stages of the color gamut, just to smooth it out. Yeah, or any other way. Just smooth it out however best that is for you. But on the whole, really, really fun piece. I think you absolutely nailed it, really, mostly. So nice one, Juan. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I literally looked at it. I was like, I didn't know who Yoshitaka Amano was, and then I saw Final Fantasy, and I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what art this is you're talking about. So yeah, you totally got the look there. I think for me my favorite bit is the sword. I really love the like all the primary colors, and it's so bright, and I really love that NMM red and blue that you got going on. Looks great. Really reminds me of like something off like the Super Nintendo. I was kind of a little bit surprised at how pale his face is. I was looking around, and yeah, Yoshitaka does sometimes just give people like pure white skin, because it's a lot of like line work anyway. But like what the artworks I remember, he tends to have a lot of pink like around here, like a washed in or sepia tones, which that's kind of hard to do in a 3D figure, obviously. But I think you still could have like a little bit of pink, like around like the hairline and like maybe in the eyes or something, just to emulate that style a little bit more, and maybe draw a little bit more attention up to the face, because it is all very, very cold in that area. But that's not to say it doesn't look good. And the blue tattooy freehand looks really good as well. Just on the cape, I thought that the back of it looks a little bit. Now it could be the photos, but it looks like the way the shadows go, it goes like very desaturated, but not very dark. Like as if it's going from a blue to a gray that is not much darker than the blue. And I'm not sure exactly why that's happening. And some bits of the cape it happens more than others on them. So I don't know, maybe like from another angle it might look a bit more readable. But that just kind of stood out to me. But I think, as Jim said, the way you've done all the falls in the cave is extremely good and really is in that kind of like, bold use of color style and like having the really like light to dark runs in every fold makes it look really, really good. So thanks again for submitting. Hopefully that was useful feedback for you. And we'd love to see more from you in the future, Juan. Next up, we've got Evan de Villiers, also first time posting, doing the Mega Boss on Wall Crusher. I figure we have seen, I don't know how many times. We should go back and like give a score. How many times we see Mega Boss on Wall Crusher? It's like one of the more common ones.
I love it.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. I really like the colors you've used. I love that like blue and pink contrast. I think it looks very striking. Um, I also like how you've done all the like horns and spiky things on the beast. They've got this almost non-metallic metal look to them with the very high contrast and the kind of scratchy edges. Um, so in terms of what you could do to kind of kick it up a notch, it's a little bit awkward. I assume you're taking the rider off to use him as his own. I don't know if the Maw Crusher is playable on its own. Maybe it is now. But one thing that I thought would add to the piece overall would be having a bit of like a drop shadow out of the rider, not like a realistic shadow or whatever, but just having, like a PlayStation 1 era circle of like gradient of darkness under him, just to separate him from the beast a bit, because you can see his feet kind of get lost in it a little bit. And in general, on this Maw Crusher, because it's got so much scales, what people tend to do is, they'll pick out the scales and be like, okay, so I have to do all the shading and the highlighting, the recesses and things, but then it all looks kind of the same because it's all scales for horns. So like the face, I think could have more color to it. Like you could start adding in like some like pink or something in the cheeks, or just lighten it up a lot. Because you think about it, like your face is made of the same skin as the rest of your body, but you wouldn't paint the figure's face with like less attention. That makes sense. I also realized he has like a weirdly human nose, which I've never noticed before, but it's kind of amusing. But yeah, I just think that in general the figure has a very like cool shape to it, where it's got this like circle of the wings, and having those pink membranes looks great because it frames the whole thing. And then it goes to blue, and if you had like a shadow under the rider, that would like frame the rider as well, if that makes sense. But I'm not sure if that'll work for you if you're like using the beast on its own. What you could do is do something where it has like a pattern like in the middle of its back of like, I don't know, like a dark magenta or something that like sprays out there just to separate it out. Or just do something to kind of like create that idea of like a circle and then a smaller circle where you have light to dark to light to dark again. But it's a really good looking figure, both the rider and the beast. And the rider, I think, like having zoomed in, like he has a huge amount of like really good detail added in on him. So great work on that. And I really love the base that he's on as well. It's like super cool. Jim?
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I really, really like it as well. I thought that the armor was very close in tone to the actual body, which is why it's he's having a hard time standing out. Alongside what Matt said about putting a drop shadow down, I think if you were to shift the tone of his armor a little bit away out of the blue spectrum, that'll help him stand out as well. And maybe just reserve like the blue for like the blade, because that's obviously going to be a bit more sharper and more highly polished probably than beaten scratched armor panels. So I'd actually like dull that down way out of the blue spectrum, and that should help him stand out from Beastie. I think Beastie's looking really good as well. I didn't understand why they look metal, these spikes, but they look cool. If they're going to be metal, maybe they're plated, who knows, who cares. I think they look really good. So yes, success. The leather is kind of sort of there. You could probably go with a few more tones in places where it's sort of wrapping around something, and it'd be catching like a sheen of light. So just go like a little bit brighter where it sort of wraps, because it's kind of it's been base coated, and then you like put the texture in with a slightly lighter paint, and that's about it. So I'd probably try and glaze in some different tones just to bring a little bit more variety to it. But yeah, on the whole, it sells as leather, but yeah, could maybe go a little bit further next time. I like the effect that you got on the wood. That was really cool. That came out nicely, and so did his sort of skin tone. Really, really nice. It's kind of a bit overexposed and blown out a little right on his face. I wasn't sure if you've got like the skin tone like going up to his nose. So forgive me if it is, but yeah, just watch out for that on the photos next time. Just knock the brightness down a little bit. And then I thought it's cool when you have big beasties and they have like two tones to them. So you've gone for it on, like, you can see it a little bit like under his tail here. I just feel like maybe you could have broken up like the body a little bit more in some places, even if just like his lower leg was just a little bit varied in terms of colour, whichever way you wanted to go with it. But yeah, on the whole, it's a big, busy piece with a lot of details, and you've stuck at it, and you've done a really, really great job bringing it all together. So, and that includes the base as well. It's really, really cool. So nice one, Evan. Thank you very much. Hope that is useful. Okay, moving to Alexis, who's done a bust for competition. So let's have a look. And once again, Alexis, it's pretty outstanding, isn't it? Really, I think it's wonderful. So smooth, so much hue and detail that's gone in, like micro texturing, like the teeth and the lips. And all these like scales that are coming out of him, which look magical for some reason. They look like they're shining. That's really, really cool. And like the attention in these little cuties sticking out of the tree is amazing. Even gone for like the half moons on the nails. Don't see that very often. That's awesome. So the only areas really for me were like the hair of his beard could be a little bit more better defined, and the hair on the back of his head as well. I think that's where the least amount of effort's gone in. It kind of looks like the tree, if you see what I mean. So I mean, it would be long. You'd have to get in here and shape this first, I think, with some darker tones, just push some shadows into it, and then come in with a sharp brush picking out some individual strands. That would be really, really helpful. Not sure what this line is across his back, whether that's like that looks like it's a problem with the actual sculpt itself, with the model. So yeah, watch out for that. Taking it to competition, that will be very noticeable if your piece is damaged in any way. Then the only other thing I thought, oh, that's a nice close up of the fingernails there. That's cool. The tree. I think that it's really, really nicely done. Mostly, it just seemed to me that you could possibly shade the lower half of it a little bit more, if that makes sense. Just sort of, this is obviously the big bright highlight, and it's very, very nicely done, very smooth. I just feel like you could be dropping a shadow in for that bottom half, because it seems very uniformly lit, like from underneath. But apart from that, it's a really stunning piece. Once again, wonderful artwork. There's another scratch there. I mean, maybe it's part of the actual design. I'm just not sure what's going on with the scratches. Sorry. But yeah, good luck with the competition. It's a really, really nice piece, and best of luck to you, Matt.
Yeah, as Jim said, it's an excellent piece. So it is for competition, so we're going to be a bit like harder on it, as it were. So yeah, I totally agree with Jim. I think that the tree, it's cool that it's this light color. It's very unusual. It's like a silver birch or something, but it's very bright, and it's not that important. And it's kind of like in this line where it's drawing your attention a bit away from the face. Like you have more brightness on the head, but it's still a big area of a lot of light colors. So I think you could definitely break that up more. Like silver birch trees, often they have these kind of like strips of bark mitting, which is what those dark lines are, but they usually have a lot more. And also, this is like one that's kind of rotted, and been lying on the forest floor. So you could like have like moss or bits where the bark is like stripped off it, all in the lower area, as Jim said, to make it draw less attention. And then you could even have like up the top where like up by his right hand, have like all the bark laid off there, so you don't have this big bright line going up. That's just an idea for you. And as well, like around the animals, you can make it so it's like it gets a bit darker around them, and they stand out a little bit more because they look really cool and cute. Um, I thought his right or his left hand at the bottom is a little bit too red in like this section for me because it looks a little bit like you got a highlight like here, and then it goes like really dark, and then it goes bright, and then really dark, and then bright again. It's very minor, but I think like probably like this section of the hand here should have a highlight. Like you can actually see my hand does at this angle I'm holding that. Just because it looks weird to have it like a light, and then it just this panel is the whole back of the hand is dark apart from the knuckles to make the knuckles look like they stick out way further than they do. The hair, as Jim said, is like probably the number one thing, especially in the back. Like it looks kind of like wool, so I would lean into that and like make it look like the way a sheep's like wool looks. Because at the moment it just doesn't look, especially with the like beautiful jeweled like stones around his back. It just looks like it's only half done. So like, and a judge is definitely going to pick you up on that. It's one thing. Remember, we were talking about that at Golden Demon. That you know, judging is sort of subjective. But like, if they go look at an area and be like, "This is incredibly detailed. This is like flat and plain," they'll be like, "Well, it's contradicting itself." So like, they can kind of they'll mark you down for that. Those scratches, I didn't notice them until Jim pointed them out, but now I can't unsee them. You could do like some blood or something like dripping out of them, so to show that they're cuts to him, if that's what you want. Um, I thought the top of his stomach, like under his like pecs, could have a little bit more of a highlight because it's like doming out. Not a huge amount, but just like right in the middle. I can't do it, but like because he's got a big beer belly. Uh, and then on the last thing. Yeah, I thought that the eyes look very good, but like I kind of have to zoom in to see them because they're very in shadow, which makes sense with how sunken his eye sockets are. But like it'd be cool to have like a really bright glint on them, especially like on the left one where it's actually visible. And then for the right one, I didn't know what you do. You could like have a tear rolling out of it or something, but just like to get that focus in on the eyes because they're like the soul of the figure, and it would just add that extra little catch, I think, from on first glance. But like it's a very very strong piece, and we wish you the best of luck in the competition. Next up, we've got Big Mac Morker painting another Borderlands Broth. Um, yeah, so you did the Orc Marine last week, and now you have this guy who's like a flag bearer, and he is so cool. I absolutely love this guy. I think like we said last month, it's a very appropriate style to have this kind of like cartoony Borderlands look on your orcs, and then like the freehand, like perfectly, like it's totally appropriate for the way it is. You can imagine him painting that himself, being absolutely delighted with it. Um, so yeah, it's a really great piece of work. I love the little. I didn't notice them immediately, but there's like all these little tiny like freehand scratches on it, and they're super cool. They really remind me of something from a cartoon. Like that's exactly the style that they'd use for that. And the way you've kind of almost done like reverse heavy metal style, where all the edges are dark because it's like the paint's chipped off and they've gotten corroded, and it gives it really cool definition, but also like looks just like very very interesting. So great work all around. You were asking how to make the NMM a bit better and the wood and the mace strap. So I think for the pole he's holding, it looks fine because it looks like a street lamp. They're like not very shiny. It does look as if it's like cartoon metal. If that makes sense. Um, the only bits that stand out as kind of not being super, or that could be kind of shinier, are the chain links that connect the bits of the sign together, and then the actual rat trap bit like the belt buckle looking bit on the mouse strap. So what you want to do there is have on the mouse strap have the vertical bits be darker, and then you have like a light catch in a kind of a V shape down the bottom. It'll be a little bit asymmetrical because it thinks at an angle, but just have like a bright kind of like shape there, and then have one on the opposite side. If that makes sense. So if it's a square, you're highlighting like down here and then up here, and then the way you have it done on the like tongue bit of it, that looks fine. It just could be a bit darker in the middle. In terms of painting wood, like it doesn't look like wood really at all. It looks like a piece of metal that was painted and then the paint peeled off and it got rusted. And I think it looks fine. But like wood has a much more, you're talking about like a piece of wood that is cut out, not like a piece of a tree or whatever. It's much more yellow looking, and you can paint wood grain in on it. I'm sure there's loads of tutorials about that. It can be fairly minimal. I think it looks fine the way it is. And like a rat trap, it could be made of metal as well rather than wood. Uh, so yeah, I think he's in a great place to be honest with you. I do think the lines in his back are a little bit too thick again, but he's a very very small figure, so I'll let you away with that. And like he's just so enjoyable to look at that I genuinely had a smile on my face the first time going through all these things. So thanks a million for submitting, Jim.
Yeah, he's fun, isn't he? I really enjoy it, and I like this style as well. Comic book style. You're honing in on it nicely. I think you did a great job on the yellows. You mentioned yellows, so for this style, I think you've done great. Because the thing with yellow is like when it gets highlighted and shaded, it sort of doesn't really change like hue or color much. It just gets more yellow, sort of in the shadow. It just gets darker. And then, obviously, if it's a bright, shiny thing, it's just going to become really, really close to white. So, obviously, without that style of painting, I think you've done exactly the right thing with the yellow, and it looks rather cool. There's just a little bit of coverage issue, I think, on this side of the helmet, so watch out for that. For the wood, I think you're nearly there. It just needs a bit more saturation, like to sell for what it is. I mean, it's an instantly recognizable thing, a mousetrap. I just think if you used a more saturated tone, it would fix it pretty much straight away. So if you've got access to Skin Wash by Vallejo, it's incredibly pigment dense and powerful, so be careful with it. Have a go at just watering that down a bit and getting that on there, see how that looks. But yeah, wood, as Matt said, there's myriad ways that you could paint wood and it still sell. Look at the previous review if you haven't already. Go back a couple of minutes and watch. It was Alexis, wasn't it? A brilliant rendition of some wood there, not using general wood colours. So look at pictures of nature as well. Just just research and then try and emulate. Simple as that, really. But I think that's selling quite nicely how it is. Let's see what else. The NMM, I think, yeah, it's just about sells if it's not a reflective surface, as Matt said. So obviously, if you want it to be more reflective, you just got to push the brights higher and the shadows darker. Get that the full range of color going from pretty much black to pretty much full white. You're sort of in the middle of the spectrum on the pole, which is fine if it's not a really shiny thing. So yeah, just practice smoothness. But again, with this style, it doesn't need to be hyper smooth. It could be more like the cell shading style that we talked about earlier. So yeah, there's that, and you could maybe just pick the links out a little bit higher, just to show them, because obviously as stuff swings around, it kind of rub any crap off of the metal and make it a bit shinier anyway, almost like polishing it a little bit. So yeah, there you go, Big Matt. I hope that helps. Oh, and just watch out for his. It looks like the paint's rubbed off his nose a little bit. I've just noticed there. So forgive me if that's just a trick of the camera, but yeah, it kind of looks like his nose is damaged. But yeah, these are really fun. Keep them coming. Thank you very much. Okay, moving up now to Brandon. Saw the whips of this a little while ago, and this is coming on nicely to finish. Well done. Doing TMM for this, so he wants feedback on how to refine it and take it to the next level, particularly TMM and OSL, and he wants us to be harsh. Okay, firstly, really, really good overall. With the metal, it's gone on smooth. I like the weathering mostly. It does need to be separated better though. Like a lot of this needs to be separated, like with very, very dark lines. So between the panels, modulation, so shadows moving up and down across. There's a lot of surfaces here. It will be hard. Like this isn't the best model to like learn how to paint TMM. like, advanced style, but basically, I don't know if you do NMM, but you treat it the same way. You've got to push shadows in as well. That obviously the metallic paint will look after you when it comes to the highlights. You just take a brighter silver and use it as a highlight, but you have to bully the shadows big time on TMM. That's what gives it the contrast that we want. It gives structure to the surfaces and the shapes, and it also lets you play around with lighting angles as well. If you just paint it flat metal like this, you're not going to be able to take control of where you want the light to be moving around. Speaking of light, that's very, very nice. That OSL glow down there, that sells nicely, and I think you've put it just about the right sort of radius away for it to sell. It's maybe gone up the leg a little bit too high just here. I'd leave it on this part because that's a much darker tone. But if it's possible, I'd probably just bring this back just a little bit, because how far it's from the source, it's only affecting that far away. It's only that far away. That is considerably further up away. So you've got to paint this radius of cast glow uniformly. If it's of an obscure shape, then it's gonna look a little bit weird. But how you've actually executed it is really, really nice. But just watch out for that. That radius has got to be evenly distributed from the source. The gun I thought could use. I mean, I didn't play the games. I've watched the TV series, but I don't remember seeing that gun. Maybe it was in there. I don't remember. But it just seems like it's really, really similar to him. So if there's any way of just picking out a few things and painting them slightly different color, it's probably all supposed to be the same, isn't it? Let's be honest. But there's little accents of red on the armor, so you could maybe try and use a complementary tone. Just a neutral color would be fine, just to break it up a little bit. What else did we have? There also needs. Going back to the OSL, I forgot to say. There needs to be a ring of shadow around where it's casting. So it looks better in this light, actually, much better. So anywhere it's affecting on the ground, there needs to be a shadow after it. So in most places it's there, but in some places it's not. It looks worse in the brighter photos, to be honest. It looks better in the darker ones. So yeah, I think you probably just ignore that. I think you've got the OSL nailed down. So yeah, for the armor, then the only other thing would be, like I said it before, maybe if you're watching, the depth of the weathering needs to be varied a little bit. So you do that by putting obviously darker lines above the light lines. So it's basically the bottom edge of it is catching the light. So you need a dark line on the top here. It looks like there is one there, actually. So just make it a little bit more pronounced, and then vary that across the model as well, to give it a little bit more depth. But yeah, on the whole, I think you did a great job with it. So bully the shadows, deepen the weathering, and maybe try and just differentiate that gun a little bit, just to help it stand out. And great job on the OSL. Nice one, Brendan. Thank you very much. Matt?
Sorry, couldn't find my mic button there.
Ah.
Yeah, great work. I think, yeah, I agree. The gun is kind of the number one issue here, in terms of being all very similar to itself and very similar to the guy. And there's certain elements in it where I don't know what Bethesda did in the game, but why would the eyepiece, the scope, be made of metal? They aren't. They're all plastic and glass. So that would just be black. And similarly, you have the drum magazine, and there's these cutout panels, but inside is just more of the exact same steel, which doesn't really necessarily make sense. It could all be painted black or whatever, or bits of it could be painted black, but it's your model, so do whatever you think to make it look good. It doesn't necessarily matter what the mechanics of the thing are, or how it's supposed to function in its universe. Yeah, OSL looks really good. I love the way you've gone all the way up to white. It really sells. I knew it. It's the Nuka-Cola, the radioactive ones. It sold immediately. I think you could maybe have the highlights a bit brighter on the skull, on the parts that are really near it, because there's parts where the face is almost touching the bottle, and they could go to a near white. And then as Jim said, it looks there's something a little bit off, and I think it's that there's no shadow kind of like on the top of the head where the light is, it's being blocked off by the front face. So if you just had like a shadow up here, that would take it like up like a big step. But it looks really good, especially in the darker photos, as Jim said, and it even works well in terms of being OSL in daylight, which is normally a big no-no. But like that's the way it looks in the games. It's just like this blue. It's so intense that it like kind of drowns out the daylight in the area near it. And I thought as well you could maybe up the saturation in like the lenses for the eyes and like that like torch or whatever it is on his head, just to bring a bit more focus up there. I think the armor overall looks a bit better than the gun anyway, but it's a really cool piece, and definitely totally in keeping with the uh, the theme that you're going for, and it looks great. Like I really love I really like it. Thanks a million for submitting. Hope that was helpful to you. And we have Alessandro, who did a present for someone based on artwork for the character and had them complaining that the hair still isn't wide enough. So, yeah, I mean, what is exactly white is the thing, because you think about it, like, you get like a dress that's white, but is it actually cream or is it blush or is it like, I don't know, pale forest or whatever? And then you got to think about lighting. Like you can have a wedding dress, and when you're outside, it'll have like green tones to it because there's like light reflecting off the trees. And when you're inside, it's all going to be yellow because you have like incandescent lights that affect the white. So yeah, I don't think that's kind of neither here nor there really. Like even if we look at your two like reference photos, one of them it is very cream, and the other one has this like purple undertone to it. So like, yeah. Um, if you want something to be really, really, really white, the best thing is heavy body acrylic titanium white. And if you want like extra nerd points, you could mix it with titanium white ink as well. I find it's a bit too much. Like just titanium white heavy body acrylic is like as white as it gets. Like you can paint it onto paper and it's like whiter than the paper. Um, and it's very heavy coverage. So I think you could do that for like highlights for the hair to make it look like this is really, really white. I think for the body, probably shading would do a lot more, especially if we compare like the reference image to your figure. Like she has very strong shadows like around the sides of her torso and like on the inside of her cloak, whereas in yours it's all still kind of like that creamy color. Um, whereas you could just go a whole tone lower, like for those bits, and then the like mid tone, the main color bits will look lighter in comparison. Um, Other than that, I think it's like a really good looking piece. I don't know exactly what scale it is, but I'd say it's pretty big, and it's got that very very clean kind of what are they called, garage projects or something? I can't remember, but like this type of like anime figure is often painted in this like fairly flat but like extremely clean style, which I think you have pretty much down pat. And I don't know, maybe ask your friend what her girlfriend thinks, because I mean, if it's for them, they're the ones who need to be happy with it. Jim, what do you reckon?
Customer's always right. Go back in with more white. There's nothing to be said. I think it looks fine as it is, to be honest. But it's not for me. As in, it's not me that needs to think it's right. I think you need to smooth out some of the shadows in the hair. Like there's some very obvious texture left from the dry brushing. So that would be nice if that was tidied up. The skin tone's really nice. Good use of the shadows and like the reddy, like rosy tones that you've got going on in some of the shaded areas. Like I'm behind the armpit there, that's good. I think you could probably rosy up the knees a little bit. Knees usually come across quite well artistically with a little bit of pink in them, as you've done for the body. And then with the skin, it does look a little bit glossy in some places, so make sure you mat the whole thing down. That would be awesome. It looks like the black that's on her is like really just flat black, so I can't really tell sort of what's going on like detail wise on it. It just looks like hyper black. If you've not painted that yet, then forgive me, but presuming it's done because it's posted and we don't do whips. Oh no, there is some highlighting on that top one. So I think you could basically just define the black a little bit better somehow. More highlighting, dry brushing, just to bring it up a notch. That would be cool. I like this little glowy blue thing that's down here. I think that sells really well. To be fair, this is one of the best pieces that we've seen you submit for a while, so I think you should be very, very proud of it. No matter what your interim friend is saying about the hair, I think it looks really, really good. So yeah, that's all I got for you, Sandro. Well done. Keep it up, and I hope that you get it over the line and she's happy with it. Okay, moving on to Stephen. A smaller project, but no less busy by the looks of it. Put more contrast into the TMM this time. Went for high contrast in the robes. As usual, clean, sharp transitions have been tried. Yeah, the red and the metals look really good. Much better. I could, depending on how bright how clean the red is, you could maybe take it up a little bit further in some places, or dirty down the edge, because the edge is like rubbing on all this metal, which would be oily. It would pick up dirt obviously from the ground, kick it up. So you could just like dry brush or pigment powder or something just to darken the edges up. That would be a nice little touch. Yeah, the metals are looking much better as well, so it's better defined this time around. I mean, there's a lot of it as well, and it's going to be tricky, obviously, to separate it all. But I think you've done a pretty good job of it. The one for me this time around is the blue. The blue looks really flat compared to some of the other colours that you've painted in. So the metals and the red, for example. The hazard stripes, you got pretty good coverage on the yellow, so that's nice. You could just shade it a little bit towards the ends, or like where it's curling around a little bit, just to just go in with like a sepia wash or something, just to structure it a little bit more. But yeah, going back to the blue, I mean, I think these are supposed to be glowing orb things, or if they're liquid filled vials, I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, they need a little bit more. And the coils on this weapon thing as well. So there's tons of videos on how to paint them, but you basically want the top of the coils to be a little bit darker, I think, traditionally, if that's what they are, plasma coils, or whether it's electrical arcing, I'm not sure, but you've got to take the tones of the blue a bit further. There's another bulb thing at the top there as well. I like what you did with the I think it's freehand, like this brocade type pattern that goes around the hood. That's really cool. Again, you could just shade it a little bit towards the edges to give it a bit more shape. And then if you're feeling really brave, like outline it in like a dark grey, not quite full black. I think that would be a little bit too stark. Either mix a very dark brown and black together, or a dark grey and black, so it's not quite dead black. That'll be too much. So yeah, on the whole, like, great effort. You could maybe stick some more bits on the base if you weren't planning to already. It's a bit flat, open, and barren. So yeah, just a couple of things of minor importance, but yeah, on the whole, I think you did a great job. Well done. That's an awful lot of metal painted. An awful lot. Matt?
Yeah, like such a complicated guy. Like he's got so much going on. It's just like, yeah, you did a good job picking out the major elements here and detailing a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't even picked up on. Agree with Jim on the base. Just looks like sand. And I mean, we could talk about, oh well, maybe Mars does look like that. You're like, yeah, but it's boring. So like, put a rock in it or something, just make it a little bit more interesting. On the blue, I always think the best reference for color for that is the cover of Metallica's album Ride the Lightning, and just use all of those colors, and that'll give you that cool like painterly lightning effect. And like on his little mechanical spider, I guess it's like a power pack or something on its back. I think the sleeves, the way you've done them with like this cream trim, looks a little bit Christmassy. It makes him look like horrible evil Santa,
Oh, yeah.
which is kind of what he's like anyway. might have been better to go with that kind of like cold white and do the same kind of pattern on the sleeves. I was a little bit appalled, to be honest with you, looking at the inside of his sleeves and being like, Games Workshop, like, why did you fill the inside of his sleeve with plastic? Like, it's meant to be hollow, but it just isn't. So that's not on you, that's on them. But go back in and like paint that in black because it's or like a really dark color because it's not meant to be like solid in there. Um, but yeah, it just I was thinking in terms of if you are doing Mechanicus, you want to avoid them looking like Santa Claus, which unless that's what you're going for. And maybe the servo skull up the top. Like I mean, there's so much stuff going on with this guy, but like servo skulls are like a real classic Games Workshop thing. So having a little bit more, like just a few highlights on that, just to like call it out a little bit more, would be great. But like he looks really good overall. Yeah, like I'd be very very happy with him if I were you. Thanks a million for submitting. We'll see you again soon. Okay, Kelvin Pentalion picking this Watcher guy, the man with too many lanterns, as he's also known. Um, you shouldn't really. I mean, I understand why you hate the model now because he's the man with too many lanterns, and people just avoid painting him usually, or paint him with his lanterns off, because like I think he's based on like concept art from the game where it's all 2D and it's fine and you don't have to worry about all these swinging lanterns and how they interact with each other. But I think he looks really good, even if it was a complete pain to get him to look like this. So how can we improve the freehand? You used to just airbrush it and then you got a much more saturated look. So good work for trying different ways. It's always great to have a different methods to get different effects. Um, and I'm going to basically give you a whole essay now. So I hope you have your notebook. But if you don't, the short answer is look at Juan Hidalgo posted a picture of a witch hunter that he did. I don't know, he doesn't have a tutorial up on the OSL, but it has like it's holding a lantern and it's got the shadow in its robe and the lantern is lighting up. And basically, the short answer is just do that. Because he has it pretty much perfectly, and it's similar lanterns to these ones. But basically, with OSL, you want to get three things you want to sell. You want to get the color right, the intensity, like how bright it is, and the direction for it. So the color here, I think it's way too orange because the lanterns are pretty much yellow, so it's going to be yellow light, and also it's the material is like a dark teal color, but like it's lit up to this incredibly vibrant orange, which is not super realistic. I think like firelight sometimes has a bit of an orange hue to it because the coals like glow red, but like lantern light is like a candle, and if you Google like classical painting candle, you'll see like it's all just warm tone, warm yellows. Um, so I would remove a lot of the orange out of this because it makes it look like the inside of his robe is orange, which is actually really cool, and it looks really cool contrasting with the figure with that dark teal. But it's like this is the pitfall everyone runs into with OSL, which is it looks like it is orange and it's white light rather than it being like yellow light or whatever, because there's too much of that orange there. So that takes us to the intensity. So again, it's way too bright. How much like if you like make a ring with your finger like that and just hold it over that like central lantern, it actually looks pretty much perfect. If you just have like a little circle around it and it has this yellow thing and a very small fade out to orange because that's can be like light drop off. But after that, it should just go black because the lantern isn't as strong as the sunlight, and the sunlight isn't even like parts of his robe in the sunlight are black. So like definitely loads of it in the lantern light should be black. And then the direction is like the big issue with this model because he's got like a million lanterns and they all have like stuff attached to them. But if we flip over to like the picture from the back, I think it's the most obvious. I think the back looks better in general because you do have that fade out into black a lot more. But like if you look at the two lanterns in the middle, they have like a solid top on them. So light can't escape in that direction, but you have all of the cloth lit up in that direction, which doesn't make any sense. And then similarly, the bottom part of them is solid, so light doesn't go out that direction. It should just be like a triangle kind of coming out of the sides. and then in some places the light's kind of like wrapped around, like that lantern down the very bottom. It's kind of, it might be, I don't know if it's like this in real life, but it looks like the lantern's here, and then the fabric like on this side of it is lit up, and the light can't come out of this and go around and come and hit this. That doesn't make any sense. Um, so yeah, like it is. If you wanted, like I would say, this is a lovely learning exercise anyway, and fair play to you for even having attempted this. If you don't want to touch the model ever again, that's fine. But you could just do a lot of glazes of like dark teal to like get rid of all the orange until it ends up in a place where you like it, and I think that would be a reasonable way of approaching it. Um, but like yeah, certainly like all the kind of ribbony things are too far away for that light to be falling on them. All the ground, almost definitely too far away. If it was nighttime, like again, if you cover the top of the model and you say like the only light source here is those lanterns, then I'd believe they're lighting up the ground like that. But like not in the light of day or whatever light is illuminating him from above. It's just going to be completely obliterated by that. Oh, and one other thing is, it would be cool if he had like a glow inside of his face, and that is contrary to everything I've said because it's far away. But it'd be cool, like imagine like there's a lantern like inside him, and that like gives him like a dot of light or something, illuminating his face. Um, but that was just something that I thought of. I think it's a really nice looking piece, and I totally understand your frustration at having painted it. Um, and I hope that didn't sound too harsh because I was just trying to give you the full two barrels on OSL there. Maybe Jim can put a more positive spin on it than
me. Matt's absolutely right with everything. Of course. I think so. I won't go over the same ground again, Kelvin. But what I will say is maybe one way to make this look better quite quickly is just to repaint the lanterns themselves, right? So okay, learning curve with the radius and the intensity and all of that stuff, but still, I think if you just painted these really, really bright, because you've got this transition going on, it's like bright at the bottom and then dark at the top. But like between here and here, the color is shifted from white to red, but it's casting sort of orange light all the way over there. So it doesn't sell because these light sources themselves are not hot enough. I would paint these a really very, 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 very bright yellow, like almost to white. This is a bit desaturated here. You need some saturation in it. And then just put edge highlight the yellow sort of around the trims, and that will make them look instantly an awful lot brighter, because I don't think there's enough saturation or brightness in the lanterns to sell this kind of lighting effect coming out. I think you're quite close on the tone, maybe a bit too orange, yeah, but you're close on the tone. So yeah, try that, and then obviously everything else Matt said as well, which you'll probably have to rewind a few times. But like the rest of the model, well put together. It's very moody and menacing, and I like the way you've picked out the little details like the faces and the ribbons. Like I don't know the lore on KDM at all, so you have to forgive me. But in contrast to what Matt said, that would look cool if that was glowing, like having but if not, though, I'd make that darker. It does look a little bit similar to his robes. You could push a little bit more shadow in the robes as well in some places, just to give it a bit more contrast. But on the whole, solid swipe at it. Good luck. I don't know how much OSL you've done previously, but just to give you a bit of reassurance, this model would give most painters a massive headache for OSL, so don't feel bad about it. That is a nightmare of a thing. So yeah, if you're not massively comfortable and confident with OSL yet, then go again, but pick something with just a single light source on it, and have another go. But yeah, all in all, great effort. But yeah, just try and lighten those up, and then take what Matt said into consideration for next time, mate. Thank you very much. Okay, on to Michael with this beautiful bust. Executioner by Jody Muir. Can't pronounce that name. Amazing bust. It was a joy to paint, despite the insanity getting going. Managed to do it all by brush. Hats off to you. That's very good. Tim Marsh has helped with tutoring. So blood work could be better, not sure how to approach it. First attempts at shadows and more volumetric approach to painting. And the volumetrics are coming across very nicely. They are wonderful little shadows all over this thing, like the glossiness of this hair. The ridges and folds of the red is looking really, really good. Like the placement of highlights and shadows on the body is great. So I see you've got the alba highlighted as well, which is what people miss most of the time. So that's really, really good. I think the only way to improve the skin, to be fair, would be just smoothness. It is a little bit like painterly, blendy in some places. So I get that's probably a cast shadow that's been painted into the hard line for a cast shadow is fine. Or not hard line, you know what I mean, harder. But I just think that in general, the skin could be smoothed out some. But generally speaking, it definitely sells. It looks great in terms of the volumetrics and the tones that you've used. Really, very good. This band that's around his arm isn't selling a particular material. I don't know whether that's a leather strap or it's supposed to be some sort of brass circlet or something. So a little bit of micro texture in there just to tell us what that material is would be cool. Same for the bracer around his wrist. I think that's supposed to be leather, but I'm not quite sure. So more tones, more texture to show us what that is. And then the severed head, like the gold circlet on that is really, really cool. So this is like an assassin by the looks of it. He's like murdered some leader of some description. I think the blood's okay. It's there's probably a few too many paths that the blood has taken. Blood is very, very thick. It doesn't really move like that. So I would have it a bit more like a bit thicker, if that makes sense. Less of the skin showing through between it. It would be more like a big thick run down there, and then a big massive thick one going down here, and then obviously tapering off. Gloss needs to be applied as well because blood is very, very shiny. So if that is blood for the blood god that you've used, then it's been too thin. You've got to put it on thicker than that. And if it wasn't blood for the blood god, then get some sort of gloss finish on it as well. That would really, really help. But yeah, I don't think it looks, bad. It looks all right, but like I say, just too many paths that the blood has taken. So yeah, other than that, I think it looks really, really good. So great work on a bust. Very, very nice, Michael. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, super, super good. Definitely like lovely feeling of style to the skin in particular, and the really lovely run on the red and the way you picked out like that ridged in the middle of his hood looks very good. I was gonna say, one thing that stood out to me was on his elbow, just like a bunch of creases, but like some of them have like you've got like a crease up here and it's all in shadow, but like it's facing upwards. So in terms of volumetric lighting, that wouldn't make sense, um, because the light's shining into it. So look out for that. And then blood, I thought like he looks a little bit like some blood should be like on his chest, like some splatter. Like if he's just killed this guy, he's pulled his head off. Just a few dots would be cool. What you can do for that is you can take like a toothpick and then dip it into paint, and it makes this very circular shape. And you can do that. You can cut it to different sizes, and you get different size ones. Might be have to be a bit brave because the skin looks so good, but it would be kind of cool. The only other thing that stood out to me is that he kind of looks like he doesn't have nipples, which is a bit
Disappointing.
weird. Yeah, it's like the Dutch gold man. Do you ever notice that? The Dutch gold man doesn't have nipples for whatever reason. So I don't know if that's on purpose or not. Like I think he does possibly have them sculpted on, but it's just because the skin is so kind of in such a realistic style, and then you look across the chest and you're like, where is this exactly? But I mean, I don't know. Maybe you left them off on purpose, but that's just a note from me. Great work all around. Really lovely looking bust. I think you should be very, very happy with it, considering it's your first try on all of these different things. Okay, next up we got Duarte Lima. We should really ask you how to pronounce your name properly at some point. Um, Looking how to improve this kind of puss in boots guy. Very cool. NMM on the sword in particular. Yeah, I the NMM on the sword actually looks pretty good. Like, it's kind of a weird shape. Like, sword, there is no sword that has a handle like that, like a banana shaped one. Um, but I think it does look good. You've got like the glint highlights in the two bits of the cross guard. I think the pommel could definitely have like a glint highlight and then like a secondary light, and then I'd call it like done. I'd be pretty happy with it. I think the studs on the couch or the chair, like those metal studs, they're a little bit. I don't know what material. I guess they're meant to be like brass buttons, but they could have some sort of other shading. So then MM, you have that issue where like you get like material confusion, where we're like, is that meant to be the same as that brass pommel? And if so, why is it behaving like differently? They look almost like they could be done in TMM, but I don't know if they are. Um, for me, the best bit on the gold is probably the belt buckle. I think that looks actually really good. I think you could maybe have a stronger highlight down the middle of it, because the way you've done like the belt, it's like bulging out and it's got this really nice highlight in the center, and you could like reflect that in the buckle because it would have a similar-ish shape and have like a really bright kind of band down there, um, and that would like look really good. And that's more important as well. Like the sword is kind of like a tangential piece there. Um, the thing that kind of the biggest area for improvement for me, I thought, was the face. Because it's kind of like I like the way you've done the fur. You have this like kind of cold orange color over black, it looks like, and then going up to a warmer one. But the face is very cold and kind of greenish looking compared to the torso, whereas it seems like it would be the other way around to like draw attention up there and make him look a little bit more like alive. Unless he's meant to be very tired, but in that case I'd just do him all in that kind of like washed out color, if that makes sense. But it's just like there's something to do with having the warm body and the cold face makes it look like he's squashed into himself because of the way cold colors like recede in our imagination. Um, so yeah, just like some more highlights around like his muzzle and things would definitely up pick things up a notch. And I really like the texture you've got on this couch, where it's like this worn out leather kind of wrecked couch. You could, if you wanted to try it out, you could do experiment with some different like kind of gloss and semi-gloss finishes, because with like worn leather like that, that happens to it, where like bits of it are shiny, but bits of it get crinkled up and stop being like that. That's just an idea for yourself. And I think the boots also look really good. They sell really well as these kind of like worn out old black boots, which are very important for the character. So great work all around. And I'll pass you over to Jim now.
Yeah, he's a fun little dude, isn't he? I think you've done really well with the metals as well. Sword, just widen out this highlight on the top, I think, and smooth that, and I think you'll be absolutely gravy. I think it's a lovely bit of NMM there. Biggest opportunity for me is the fur, actually. Having it doing this like hashing technique's really good for fur, but it's kind of you've started it over black and it's very stark between the brush strokes. So I'd go for more brush strokes and try and bring a bit more like saturation and also shape to the cat. You haven't really exaggerated the shapes that are already there. So you've got to highlight it sort of volumetrically as well while you're doing these scratches. Try and cover up as much of that black as you can, because for me it's just too stark, and you're losing the effect of the fur that way. And then when you've finished with all your scratching and you've got all the highlights set and the shapes of it are in volumetrically, then you can go in and shade certain areas to make it darker, rather than trying to build everything up from a black, I find, when doing fur. But that's really about it that Matt hasn't already covered. Really nice. Oh, you could maybe push the highlights on the blue a little bit as well in some places, just to give it the full run of color, because it's kind of dark highlight. That's it. You need at least 5 variations of any color on a model to get the full run of gamut, and you've only got 2 there, so you've got like your 3 and your 4 maybe. So you need to go 2 highlights on top of that, and 1 step darker as well. But great work on the couch. That looks really cool. Really selling like the damage and the different materials that have been used to patch it up. That's really nice. And as Matt said, that gold belt buckle was a triumph. So yeah, nice one. Very, very good. Thank you, Duarte. Moving on then to Beelkins. He's finished the Cyberpunk Bully bust that started in a workshop in April. Second bust ever, and it's been display piece for the Contrast Painting Festival. So good luck with that. That's this weekend as well, isn't it? In fact, so we'll find out how you did in a few days. Would like to ask you for an overall review, pointing out strengths and weaknesses and any missed opportunities. So this is really, really lovely. First off, for a second bust, this is definitely going in a very strong direction. Indeed, it's lovely. What jumped out to me like first was the purple. Oh, excuse me. So it looks like you could push that a little bit further and maybe some texture to it as well. On a bust, it's very, very important to sell each material that you're trying to show with your paint. And a little bit more texture to the leather strap as well. It does look like there's some there, but I would push that a little bit further. It's there, it's good, but just more. Everything on a bust has to be like massively more all the time. So this, I'm not sure whether it's fur or a wreath or something, but this bright magenta, and then having the magenta in the eyes and also in the cyberpunky metally bits, it's really, really nice. It's a great compliment to the composition overall. I like it. I just feel that perhaps if the eyes were brighter, it would be better, because at the moment, the eyes are bright, but because this is such a large surface area, kind of the attention's kind of pulling down away from his face a little bit. So you've made the color like the triangle nicely, but I would raise the intensity of his eyes if possible. That would be really, really cool. And being as they're glowing as well, perhaps if it's not there already, I can't see any, just a little bit of a cast glow on like the underneath his eyebrows, and maybe a little bit on these folds, like the bags under his eyes as well. Just very, very subtle glaze of something quite dark in that color range. That would be cool. The slash marks in the hair I thought were an opportunity. I don't know if that's just like high fashion in this day and age when people dress like this, but they kind of look like an opportunity to make them into a scar, but maybe they're a bit more uniformly like spaced for that, and they're the same on both sides. I've just realised as well, so maybe not, but like a scar or something on him in one of them, perhaps, maybe. Then I had the highlights and the eyebrows are pretty chunky and quite extreme in their brightness. So like how you've done the hair is gorgeous, how you've got like the sheen on it and you've got everything picked out nicely, but on the eyebrows it's kind of a bit much to be going that bright, and it's quite chunky in places. So just try and refine the eyebrows a little bit better. Like the hair that he's got on his moustache, like on his top lip, I think he's got like a little bit of stubble or something. So that's really, really good there. So you need that same sort of level of refinement in every feature of the face. Eyebrows included. The ears could maybe have a little bit more red in them, I thought, and around the nose as well. Just bring him a bit of life. I know he's got like magenta already, but skin just in general needs a bit of red in it to give it a bit of life, particularly so in ears and noses. So that is the one. Yeah, that was the last one. So on the whole, though, really, really nice. So I hope you did well in the competition. It's probably finished already. So let us know how you got on, and I'll pass you over to Matt.
Yeah, totally. It's a really nice piece, especially for your second bust. Palette really reminds me of Katarina. I'm not even going to try to say her second name, but it's that kind of like magenta-y, purpley, lovely look to it. I thought with the fur lining, that pink thing, you could have more darker separation between the like strands in it, and then have like a white highlight, because it's just like it's all very bright, but it doesn't have as much range, given that it's like overlapping pieces of fur, if that makes sense. And I really like the thing on its back, the like heartbeat or whatever. It's a really cool feature to have on a bust where you have a space for something interesting there. and you could have like a few little like just white dots to be like the peaks of those would look kind of cool. Um, and then was it on the belts? I thought it's a very over detailed piece, so I'm sure it was very annoying to paint the different textures in there. One thing you can do when you have something like that, where it's like it's a lot of triangles set in, and you don't want to individually like jewel every single one of them, you can do it to begin with like as a gradient that goes from here to here, where it's like bright blue and then dark blue, kind of like you've done on some of the other elements. And then you paint the leather over it, and then you just do a smaller amount of shading, and it almost looks kind of like a health bar, like in Dead Space. But I mean, the way you've done it here is very cool anyway. But that would just be like a lazy man's way of doing it. And yeah, I agree with Jim on the eyes. I think there isn't enough area of the actual magenta because it's a very small circle and then it goes to white very quickly. If like more of the eye was magenta and just has a very small white dot, I think that would draw our attention a little bit better. And I think maybe the lips could have a bit more color to him because he's got very full lips, unlike myself. But they're quite like dark and not very saturated, and they don't stand out from like the kind of stubbly face around there, which looks great. But that's just an opportunity if you want to do it, and then you can have like a little highlight in the middle of the lip to show it's wet as well. Which it looks like you have that, but because it's like quite a desaturated color, it makes him look like it's like bloodless lips, if that makes any sense to you. But absolutely stunning piece of work. Yeah, I hope you had a great time at Contrast. And then we have someone else, Albert, whose surname I'm not going to say, also submitting this to Contrast. This is the same one, I think. So maybe you guys met up. That'd be cool. So it's another bust. It's the chef dude from whoever does this cool bust. And is it your first bust? First try at anything larger scale. So this is really, really great. Given that busts are a lot of work and a lot of adapting to like the kind of the whole game of that. I think the skin is very, very nice, which is super important here. I like the way you've handled the kind of white fabric on the hat and on the apron, and I really like that awesome freehand pattern you have on the tentacle. It's very, very cool all together. So in terms of areas for improvement, I think similar to Bielkin's bust, the lips could be a little bit like redder. They're very close to his skin tone, and similarly like around the eyes, like he has quite small eyes for a bust, but like people have a lot of red tones, like you have the inside, the eyelid and stuff. And you want that to stand out as much as possible because the eyes are like almost the most important detail there, possibly the most important detail there. He looks like he's like blinded in one eye, which is a good trick for like when you don't want to worry about getting their eyes right. But the other eye could have much more saturated color to draw in more attention, like a really brilliant blue, because you've already got blue in your color scheme, and it would contrast with this like orange red hair. It looks like if there is any color there at all, it's very washed out. It looks like he just has like kind of a black dot over kind of gray. And then on the chin, some stubble would be kind of nice. Not like a huge amount, but just like, again, you could just do lots of like either extremely tiny dots like on the chin of like your orange color, or thin the orange out until it like breaks apart and you get all these like micro dots in there when you glaze it on. Do it until you get to where you want it to be. And then I kind of feel like I should leave Jim to say it, but I'm gonna just gazump Jim and say like the ear needs to be more red. Like look at how red my ear is. Look at it. It's very red. It's basically red. And when you don't do it that way, like if you just look at his side profile, they get that weird fake ears thing where it looks like the dwarves in The Hobbit where they're wearing a hood that has like plastic ears on it. Because yeah, ears are like for a very pale person, they're gonna have extremely red ears. And I think the skin tone overall looks really good with like the muscle structure, especially in the left arm, at the back, like that looks extremely like painterly and nice. You could maybe have a bit more red in the fingers on the left hand because again, similar like your fingernails are actually pink if you're a pale redhead like myself. So and again, you have this like red color that wraps around from underneath, whereas his hands are very like kind of monotone up there. But for your first bust, this is absolutely stunning. Thanks a million for submitting. Hope you had a great time at the festival as well. Jim?
Yeah, it is really good, isn't it? I love the pattern that you've put onto the tentacle as well. I don't know if I can't remember if Matt mentioned that, but I think you did a really, really nice job of rendering that. Super duper. I thought that the photos are kind of blowing out some of the detail, I think. So forgive me if this is a bit harsh, but the hair is actually, it looks like it needs more like shape to it, more structuring with the paint. So deeper shadows, better separation, and brighter highlights as well. The eyes definitely, as Matt said, they need to be bolder. They kind of look milky and washed out. But again, it might be down to the photo because it's in a very, very bright light we can see from this background. So next time you're taking pictures, try and have like a more diffused light rather than a direct lamp pointed straight at it, because you get these very, very harsh shadows, and also just blasts away all of the highlight detail, so we can't read it properly. So yeah, just make sure that you've got a nice bold color in those eyes. I think they're blue by the looks of it, but yeah, just watch out for that. The scar looks really good. I like that. His dirty white apron is beautifully done. I did think you had an opportunity there just for a bit of some spatter of some sort, just either sponge or flick or airbrush blasting some, maybe blood from the thing that he's chopping up, or it's old. Chefs tend to wipe their hands on their apron quite a bit, don't they? So yeah, just some mess on his apron I thought would be a nice touch. But yeah, in general, skin tone really nice. Separated nicely, like all these elements on his neck is good. You could maybe put something on the hat as well. It's just a big flat white hat, so yeah, maybe a bit of dirt or like a little pattern or something somewhere on it. He's sailor as well, so we've seen one of these busts. A nice thing that they did is they put like a nautical tattoo on him. It was like an anchor or a compass or something like that. So if you're brave enough to try that, maybe on the other arm or something, standard, typical, stereotypical, in fact, sailor tattoos. Nice opportunity. But yeah, really great for your first bust. I hope you did well at the contrast, and please come again and show us more of your lovely work, Albert. Thank you very much. And that's it, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, thanks a million to everyone who submitted their work. Hopefully we've given you some useful feedback, and we'd love to see more from you in the future. The next event will be up like day or tomorrow, so we look forward to seeing more from you next month.